Welcome to this Cool Kids training session. This video presentation is a training session intended for schools and nurseries in the Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin areas. The session is delivered by the mainstream team of paediatric occupational therapists who are part of the Children's Community Occupational Therapy team within Shropshire Community Health NHS Trust and provide occupational therapy services to mainstream schools in the Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin areas. There are two Cool Kids programme manuals, one for nursery and reception age children and the second for primary school age children. These programme manuals are essential for delivering the programme. Schools or nurseries requiring a copy may contact the Occupational Therapy Department, details for which are included at the end of this presentation. This presentation may be paused or stopped and you may return to view the session again should you wish to. This training may also be delivered face-to-face through traded services to school and nurseries, details for which may be obtained through contacting this service. The aims for this training session are to provide education staff with the information and knowledge to be able to deliver Cool Kids training sessions themselves within schools or nursery settings. This session will provide you with an understanding of what the Cool Kids programme is, its value, which children may benefit, and how it will help the children who complete this programme. It will demonstrate how to use the manuals to run sessions and make observations and record progress for children within your setting. We will give an overview of the normal development of movement, discuss sensory skills and regulating energy levels, and share practical tips to support this. We will inform you of signposting options for any concerns you may have relating to a child's movement skills. What is Cool Kids? The Cool Kids programme was designed and developed by Joy High, an occupational therapist working with Wolverhampton City Primary Care Trust and Wolverhampton Local Education Authority. They kindly shared the programme freely as a teacher-friendly resource. Cool Kids is a developmental programme of activities initially developed for use with children in key stages 1 and 2, though it may be adapted for older children. Reported improvements for motor ability, confidence and concentration have been reported by education staff and families. The programme is designed to be delivered in small groups supported by school staff with an understanding of the programme. The programme is based on and follows the typical pattern of child development for movement skills through working through the foundations skills underpinning both gross and fine motor skills. Completion of activities helps to fill in any gaps a child may have in their motor skills development. An example is children who do not crawl or only crawl for a short time may have missed opportunity to develop bilateral skills, strength and stability at the shoulder, hip and hand muscles. Who is it for? Cool Kids was not designed for use with children or young people with a physical disability, for example those with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy or a dystrophy condition. It works on normal development and so cannot fix or mend damaged neurological pathways caused by an acquired brain injury or other neurological damage. If you have any queries or concerns around the suitability of this programme for a child you work with, please contact the child's occupational therapist for advice. The great thing is that Cool Kids is a helpful programme for schools to deliver for children who may be seen as underachievers and not meeting their potential. Include children who struggle with gross motor skills, for example, poor balance or difficulties kicking or catching balls, and those who struggle with or avoid gross motor play, such as during PE, playing football, or playtime activities. It is designed to benefit those with functional difficulties at home and school, such as difficulties using a ruler or scissors, dressing including buttons and zips, fastening shoelaces, or cutlery use. Because it focuses on the early sensory and movement skills, it is also beneficial for children who are struggling with listening, lack concentration, or have difficulty sitting in the classroom. Cool Kids is for use with children with movement difficulties and is also suitable for children with learning difficulties or who are autistic. How does Cool Kids help? The programme develops skills in a staged approach, giving lots of opportunity to practice the underpinning skills necessary for more advanced actions such as skipping, hopping and ball skills. It also encourages listening and language development through following instructions. Each session rounds up with a relaxation section, supporting development of self-regulation, allowing the child to calm and be ready to return to the classroom. The sessions are designed to include activities that develop body awareness, the sense of one's self in space, and the proprioceptive sense. Proprioception is explained in greater detail later in this presentation, and you will gain an understanding of what this sense does. The program follows normal or typical development, which in humans starts from the head and trunk and out away from the body. The sessions facilitate improvements in postural control. Postural control supports everything we do and comes from our core or trunk, so the program works through the development stages of lying, sitting, on all fours, kneeling and standing. It is developed as we begin to move as babies and continues to increase, particularly through young children, to give us the control our bodies require to carry out everyday tasks. The sessions support praxis, which means to act or do. The program supports this through constant repetition and develops a skill in each session. Children will work on the development of their bilateral skills and crossing their body's midline. They will initially work on simple reaching activities, eventually progressing to more complex movements that include crawling, balancing, and ball skills. Children will develop a better awareness of their senses. These include hidden senses, which are described in detail later in this presentation. The program has been shown to lead to an improvement in the motor skills required for everyday activities and in the foundation motor skills or building blocks or underpinning skills. For example, those improving postural control and hip stability, there is improvement in the child's ability to balance, underpinning the ability to stand on one leg and swing the other when kicking a ball in a game of football. Another outcome is an increase in the ability to concentrate. Cool Kids' effectiveness can be demonstrated by the ability to calm down, concentrate, and become achievers. It's also beneficial to discuss with the class teacher any observations you or they have made, such as greater concentration or more willingness to participate in classroom play or PE activities. There are no fixed rules for the sessions. They are intended as guidelines only. Feel free to personalise the activities to fit interests or topics they are studying. It is recommended that each session should last 20 to 30 minutes and be completed every school day. If this isn't possible, be aware that the program must be carried out for a minimum of 3 times each week to be beneficial. Whilst the session plans have no fixed rules, there is a structure to the program, so it's important to follow it sequentially. For example, don't change the body positions being focused on. Although the movements may appear quite simple, remember the program is improving the building blocks which more complex skills rely on. Please don't move on too quickly. Do not be afraid to repeat sessions. Repetition of activities is advised and an integral part of the program. Some children will struggle in a particular area. Therefore, it is really important for them to achieve each activity before progressing to the next session. Remember, the program follows the pattern of typical development, so it's important to practice and be successful before moving on so that any developmental gaps are securely filled. It is okay to repeat weeks, so session 7, for example, may last 2 weeks. It is beneficial to place children in a group with children of a similar ability so that the environment feels supportive rather than competitive. The group sizes will depend on the children and number of staff. Some schools have completed Cool Kids for the whole class at Key Stage 1 and then worked with smaller groups at Key Stage 2. Ideally, groups should be 6 children, but smaller groups may be necessary with some children. Give children plenty of encouragement. There is no right and wrong, so don't spend time correcting. Encourage the children to use big, free movement within the activities, which work on the early, less challenging balance positions and allows you to encourage the child to experiment with movement, building motor planning praxis as well as strength and confidence. Stay with the familiar activities as well as introducing new challenges. As the sessions progress, the children remember what they have done previously, and if they have practiced or feel they have made progress, they will want to show you what they can do. Consider using music and rhymes or build in themes or topics to create interest. For example, if a class is learning about an animal, a place, or a child loves a dinosaur, you could use it within the sessions. If you're learning about space, balance like an astronaut. Most importantly, remember to all have fun. And don't be tempted to skip the relaxation part of this session. These are important parts of teaching the children to self-regulate and to be calm and ready to learn when they return to the classroom. As with the other activities, repetition increases skill. Don't panic if the children struggle to relax at the beginning. Most sessions have 3 parts, starting with a warm-up time, then an activity working on a specific area, and finally a period of relaxation. The sessions should run for the whole week, so for session 2 you would complete the warm-up and would then select activities to complete each day, using the same session for the whole week. So you don't need to complete every activity on day 1. The next week, you may move on to session 3. This slide is session 2 of the primary age programme. Think of it as a lesson plan. Towards the top of the page, you will see that it tells you the aim of the session. In session 2, children will work towards developing their body awareness through working lying on their backs. This is known as working in supine. The opposite of this would be prone, lying on your tummy. You can see 3 headings: activities, watchful, and equipment. For session 2, you will notice that there is no requirement for any equipment, just the child. It would, of course, be sensible to use floor mats just as you would in a PE lesson and ensure that the children have enough space to move around safely. You do not need any specialist equipment for this programme. Future sessions might use PE equipment such as beanbags or balls. You can see that there is a lot of helpful instruction and guidance to support your delivery of the session. Until the child has been successful in that session, you won't need to move on, so you will only need to familiarise yourself with the current session you and the group are working on. The first section of the activity suggests the rules of the session. For example, ban all means of moving around the room except for, example, crawling, shuffling, in long sitting and creeping and prone during the session. By long sitting, it means sitting on the floor with legs stretched straight out in front. It also guides you to play some warm-up games to encourage the child and help them to relax into the session. Here they suggest head, shoulders, knees and toes. This warm-up supports the development of the child's body awareness of where parts of their body are in relation to each other through rhythmic movements. It increases their awareness of the names of the body parts. It helps them to have an internal sense of where their body starts and stops and how much space they fill. This is important for moving around without bumping into things or people. If they find head, shoulders, knees and toes easy, you can increase the challenge by asking them to do this with their eyes closed. The main activities section tells you that they will be lying on their backs. In the watchful column, you are guided to look for quality of movement and the ability to move one limb without the rest of the body following. This is known as the ability to isolate movements. This ability develops as we learn to control movements, and it starts with isolating head movement. Imagine a baby lying on its back, starting to turn its head towards a sound. Remember that the programme follows typical development, and therefore it begins with the first movements you would expect to see a baby achieving as they develop. Activities 1 and 2 use head movements only. Imagine the children's backs, shoulders, arms and legs are glued to the floor and you are aiming to see just the head moving. Activity 3, where the children perform Angels in the Snow, moves on developmentally to include symmetrical movements of the arms and legs, which should always remain in contact with the floor. Through this contact with the floor, the children receive lots of sensory tactile feedback from the floor and process this through their sense of touch. This feedback supports them to know where their limbs are and how quickly and evenly they are moving, developing their ability to carry out movements in a controlled, coordinated way without having to look and see where their bodies are. Activities 4 and 5 start to use the legs raised from the floor. Children will be using their core strength, using their tummy and legs muscles to lift their legs and to remain in position, initially without rolling to the side. Remember, you can repeat the sessions as many times as needed. Don't worry if you don't get through the whole session first time. And if a child is struggling to achieve the movements, keep it simple. This is meant to be fun. Then repeat the session and progress to the more difficult commands when you observe improvements. Walking on heels gives lots of proprioceptive feedback. The calming and organising effect of this sense will be explained later in the presentation. Remember to always round up the sessions with relaxation activities. In this session, aim for 30 seconds of stillness. Some children find this easy, others find this extremely challenging. Dimming the lights and introducing quiet, gentle music may be helpful and support the children to return calmly and quietly to class whilst being ready to learn. There are 25 sessions in the primary age programme and 21 in the nursery reception programme. Of the 25 sessions in the primary age programme, this first session is an assessment which is repeated in the 24th session. Assessment helps to measure improvements made. Although assessment may sound daunting, you are being asked to observe the child making set movements and will support you through examples over the next few slides. It is recommended the same person completes both assessments so that scoring is consistent. You may also find it easier if you video the assessment session to make scoring easier. It is useful to write a short note regarding what you have seen for the assessment too. The videos you will see later in this presentation show children of different abilities attempting the same assessment activities and demonstrates the difficulties they may have with these tasks. Before starting the other sessions on the Cool Kids programme, it is recommended that the initial assessment is completed. Please don't worry that it's a formalised assessment, as it's a structured way to observe the child's skills at the beginning of the programme and then review progress at the end. There are 4 activities to assess: rolling, commando crawling, crawling on all fours forwards and backwards, and jumping forwards and backwards. The child is marked on a 1 to 5 scale. These initial assessment scores are then reviewed against their scores in the 24th reassessment session and used as guidance of their progress. Ideally, get each child to complete the initial assessment individually without them seeing how others complete the activities, or possibly in pairs if for some reason doing it individually is not possible. Assessing and reviewing progress helps you and schools to monitor a child's progress. It alerts you if no progress is being made and helps teaching staff to evaluate whether a referral to another service is required. This slide shows the scoring criteria. If they complete an activity successfully, then it will be a 5. If they are unable to start it, then it is a 1, or starts but unable to complete it, then it is a 2. If they complete but have observable difficulties, then the score will be a 3 or a 4. Please do not struggle with specifics. Remember, it's just a guide. Having 2 people scoring is recommended, and preferably the same people at the end of the programme. On the next few slides, you will see 3 children participating in the different initial assessment activities. The 2 boys are the same age but demonstrate different levels of difficulty. The girl is a good example of completion. She rolls across the 2 mats fluently, rolling in a straight line. She would score a 5. The boy begins well, but his movements appear effortful and he is going off squiffy at a slant at the end of the edge of the mat and is unsure how to correct his position. I would score him a 3. Some of you may give him a score of 4. This is okay, and a reason why it helps to have the same person scoring.
He's doing really well. Well done. Perfect.
This boy again starts well but lacks rhythm towards the end and needs to adjust his body position. I would score him a 4. What was your score? Creeping, also known as commando crawling. The child is observed crawling across the mats, keeping as low as possible. We should see reciprocal movements with arms and legs. The bottom should also not be raised. Reciprocal movements are movements where both the arms and or legs move at the same time but in opposite directions in a rhythmical way. Reciprocal movements are essential in childhood development as they enable us to roll, crawl, sit, stand, and ultimately walk and run. The girl uses these reciprocal movements, although her bottom is slightly raised. I would give a mark of 5. There are no reciprocal movements with the boy. He pulls himself forward with a lot of effort, dragging his legs behind him. I would give a score of 3. This child begins with pulling himself by his arms but alters to a bilateral creep, although his bottom raises. I would probably give a score of 4. You may agree or give a score of 3. If you aren't recording the session, write a note of what you have seen on the assessment form. Crawling forwards and backwards. The child is asked to crawl forwards and then crawl backwards to where they started. We are looking for a symmetrical and reciprocal crawl, both forwards and backwards. Scoring guide is looking for fluent movements and that they are able to maintain their position.
And backwards.
And now backwards. Back to the start.
This boy has difficulty maintaining the position with his arms and difficulty maintaining an upright position. He eventually remembers to crawl backwards, but has to keep looking where his position is and where the end is. He collapses again at the end. I would give him a score of 3.
No, I can't. It's so hard. It's okay, backwards.
This boy does keep himself up with his arms, but is just bunny hopping with his legs. Similar to the previous boy, he does not go backwards, but continues going forward to the end. I would score him a 3. This is a smooth reciprocal crawl forwards and backwards. What would you score? I would score a 5. Jumping forwards and then jumping backwards. The criteria for this is to jump, keeping both feet together with fluid movements forwards and then backwards.
Go backwards, Stacey. That's it. Keep going backwards. Well done.
Good boy.
You're there.
The boy is unable to keep his feet together and his movements resemble skipping. He appears to get stuck coming to backwards and has difficulty knowing where he is in space and has to look intensely to know where he is at the end. This is an indication of proprioceptive difficulties, our body awareness sense, which will be discussed in more detail later. It also demonstrates the increased level of effort he is having to apply to complete the task. Rushing to complete an activity which is difficult is common with lots of children we see. I would give a score 3.
Stop. And now jump back.
Keep facing me. Keep facing me, Finn.
Face Heather.
Finn. That's it. Now jump now. Keep
No,
looking at
face
me.
Heather.
Keep looking at me. That's it.
That's
now
it.
jump.
That's it.
Keep going.
Well done.
This boy's movements lack fluency and appear effortful. Again, there is confusion on his return of which way he should be moving. When he does go backwards, he needs to really observe his movements and almost walks backwards to complete. I would score a 3.
Big jumps. Lovely. Good jumps. Lovely.
This child's movements are smooth and coordinated. I would give a score of 5. Just to repeat, the initial assessment scores are just a guide and provide a helpful baseline to be reviewed when they have completed the programme and the 24th reassessment session. The improvement is likely to be gradual. Remember, scores given by different people vary, so try to use the same person to score at the start and finish of the programme. Children's motor development usually follows a typical pattern where control is developed from the head down to the spine and out to the arms and legs. A young baby will start to lift and turn its head to look at and focus on objects. As control develops, they will turn their body too and start to roll. Working on rolling and crawling helps to develop the control of the muscles down the spine, and this postural control is needed for good balance. As babies learn to roll and crawl, the control in their hips and shoulders develops, and the arms and leg movements improve. If we don't have good control at our shoulders, then it is difficult to lift our arms to complete fine motor activities, like writing or using scissors. Also, if we don't have good postural and hip control, it may be harder to balance. Babies are born with a range of reflexes, which are movements that happen automatically to help them survive. For example, when you touch or stroke the side of a baby's mouth, they will turn their head and open the mouth to root in the direction they are being touched. These reflexes should become integrated or disappear as the baby gains control over their motor movements. Sometimes there are gaps in a child's motor development, or some reflexes may not have been fully integrated. You don't need to worry about if there are reflexes that haven't been integrated, just know that Cool Kids helps. Over the years, more containers are marketed and sold for babies, such as car seats or bouncers, and these have reduced the natural movement opportunity that babies have when lying flat, such as rolling. The Safer Sleeping campaign also made parents scared to put their babies on their stomachs to play, although there is now more education about the importance of placing awake babies flat on the floor and on their stomachs to play. Cool Kids follows these developmental patterns and aims to help integrate reflexes, so the programme starts with working in lying, to sitting, to crawling, to kneeling, before doing more complex activities when standing and moving. It is important not to rush past the early weeks of the programme to allow plenty of opportunity for the early movement skills to become established. Our sensory system starts to develop before we are born. It is the foundation on which other skills are built on. Like a wall, if the foundations aren't right, then there will be gaps or difficulties further up the wall. Sensory and motor skills develop first, with more complex development such as our ability to participate in activities like getting dressed, behaviour and academic learning coming last. In school, you may practice handwriting patterns to develop handwriting skills. Occupational therapists may support development of dressing skills such as tying laces to develop underlying or earlier skills. These are known as a top-down approach. We also use a bottom-up approach where we help develop the underlying skills such as working on sensory or motor skills so that the child has developed the right underlying skills to complete an activity. Cool Kids is a bottom-up approach. It aims to develop the early sensory motor foundation skills so that the child can then participate in school-based activities such as using scissors, handwriting, or sitting still and concentrating. We all have a sensory system that helps us to respond to the world. When we talk about our senses, you may think about what we see, hear, or smell, but as occupational therapists, we are interested in our hidden senses. The first hidden sense is our movement or vestibular sense. This sense comes from 3 circular hoops in our inner ear. As our head moves or we accelerate, fluid moves in these hoops and tells our brain whether we are still or moving, what direction we are going in, and how fast. This sense is important for our balance and posture. The second sense is the tactile or touch sense. Every time our skin is touched, a message is sent to our brains to tell us where we were touched, how hot or cold the touch was, and whether it was a tickle, gentle touch, or firm touch. It is the sense that tells us if we are hurt. The tactile system is very important for keeping us safe, but it's also important for our hand or fine motor skills and helps us to develop relationships with others. The final sense is the body position or proprioceptive sense. Every time you move a muscle or joint, a message is sent to the brain so we know what position our body is in. Sensory information is constantly being processed to help us to respond to our environment and participate in activities. Difficulties can impact on any part of the sensory or motor system. Cool Kids aims to support the development of these systems. For example, a child may have poor proprioceptive awareness. This sense allows us to know what position our body is in and where it is in relation to other objects in the environment. It forms part of our body awareness and has an important contribution to motor control. Good proprioception allows us to know how much force to use when completing activities. For example, when we lift a plastic cup of water up, we need to use enough force to lift it, but not too much that we squeeze too hard and squash the cup. Difficulties may cause a child to look clumsy. They may fall over or bump into objects, or they may have difficulties judging how much force to use, so accidentally break things, press too hard when writing, or play too roughly with others. Subconscious messages are sent when we move, so difficulties can cause a child to fidget when seated to attempt to give more sensory feedback regarding body position. Another common area of difficulty is poor bilateral integration. One side of the brain moves the opposite side of the body, so when completing activities involving both sides of the body, both sides of the brain must work together to coordinate these movements. Difficulties with bilateral integration can make it difficult to work across the middle of the body, or it may take longer for the child to establish hand dominance. Planning and sequencing movements, especially involving both sides of the body, may be difficult and impact on activities, such as fastening buttons or zips. Balance may be challenging, for example, standing on one leg. How we process sensory information impacts on our ability to respond to our environment. We have millions of sensory information bombarding our nervous system each second. Our brains try to filter out information which is not relevant to what we are doing, but allow the information that is needed to go through. When our sensory systems are immature or aren't functioning effectively, or even if we are feeling very anxious or stressed, this filtering system does not work well. We may have too much sensory information passing through the filter or not enough. Either way, it makes it hard for us to respond effectively or appropriately. It may be useful to think about this filtering system as a conveyor belt and the boxes on the conveyor belt as sensory information. To participate in activities, the child needs to be alert but calm. They need to be able to focus on their work but feel relaxed. We call this just right. The conveyor belt is moving the boxes of sensory information through the sensory system in a steady, controlled way so that it can be organised and sorted effectively. If there is too much sensory information, such as in a busy environment, or it is not filtered out effectively, it is harder to organise the information that is coming through. The conveyor belt is moving so fast that the sensory information cannot be filtered or sorted effectively. It is hard to focus on the information that is relevant, and the nervous system can quickly feel overwhelmed. This can cause the child to feel very angry, upset, excited, or worried. They find it harder to focus and may be moving around a lot. This is a high engine state, and learning or participating in classroom activities will be extremely difficult. At the other end of the spectrum is too much information is filtered out, so the sensory system struggles to find the relevant pieces of information. The conveyor belt will be moving too slow. It will be difficult to remain focused, and important sensory information may be missed. The child appears sluggish, hard to get going, daydreaming, or low. This is a low engine state, which is also making learning difficult. Proprioceptive or heavy work activities can help to regulate the sensory information. It can calm a high engine state, but will have an alerting effect on a low engine state. Cool Kids works at a sensory motor level, and so will hopefully support the child to achieve a just right state so they are able to function within the classroom. The relaxation part of the Cool Kids also supports the child to learn how to move between a calm and alert state, so it is an important part of the programme. Proprioception continues to have an impact on the sensory system after the input has happened, so incorporating proprioception heavy work before an activity where the child needs to be regulated or just right is recommended. Proprioception can be provided by activities that have a resistance to movement, such as push, pull, carry or climb, and use large muscles, gross motor play. Consider what activities are accessible in the playground. If activities involving push, pull, carry or climb can be encouraged during play, this will provide lots of proprioceptive input between lessons. Some schools have used old tyres for children to use during play, naturally encouraging push and pull activities. How could play be enriched at your school? As we have discussed, many children would benefit from participating in Cool Kids. However, if progress has not been made over time, it may be necessary to consider if there are underlying reasons that require further investigation. Firstly, consider if there are attention or learning needs that may need to be assessed by other services, such as BU or the Learning Support Advisory teachers or Educational Psychology team. If there are motor difficulties with functional activities, such as fastening buttons or using scissors or cutlery, it may be that a referral to the Occupational Therapy Service is indicated. Please discuss with parents if the child is known to the therapy services. About 5 to 6% of the general population have developmental coordination disorder, DCD, which impacts on a child's coordination and ability to learn new motor-based activities despite sufficient opportunity to do so. To meet the criteria for DCD, the child's ability to complete motor-based activities must be substantially below other areas of development, such as their overall level of learning. Difficulties will impact on all areas of the child's life, such as dressing skills, learning to ride a bike, as well as school-based activities such as using scissors and pencil control. A child will not meet the criteria for a diagnosis if they have a general medical condition, such as cerebral palsy, hemiplegia or muscular dystrophy, or an intellectual disability or visual impairment. At the time of making this video, the Occupational Therapy Service offer a telephone advice line to parents and school where general advice and, if required, signposting to other services is provided. For up-to-date referral criteria and form, as well as lots of additional resources, please refer to the Children's Occupational Therapy webpage on the Shropshire Community Health NHS Trust website.